Welcome to Salute and Biohacking podcast. My name is Vanessa Bertinotti and my mission is to build a tribe that shares my same passion for health optimization and biohacking by bringing to the table experts and people who inspire me. If you are not yet familiar with this term biohacking, it's basically the art of developing our potential. The element that characterizes all my guests is the belief that improving one's health in a preventing form is always more beneficial than treating disease. Many diseases could be prevented if people began to be more aware of their bodies and how they function. All the information contained in this podcast is purely informative and does not replace medical or therapeutic consultancy. If you're a fan of this podcast, please help me spread it to as many people as possible. I explain how to rate the podcast, write a review, or make a donation on my website, www.𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐞.com. Find a link to my website in the show note of this episode. My guest today is Clint Ober, CEO of EarthFX Inc., a revolutionary pioneer behind the grounding movement. He spent the last 20 years researching and validating the effect of electrically grounding the human body to Earth to reduce and prevent inflammation and related autoimmune disorders. He is also the co-author of a brilliant book on health called 𝐟𝐻𝐸𝐻 and featured in a fantastic documentary called the 𝐿 Movie. I am a big fan of grounding. It's one of my favorite daily routines, and I find it extremely powerful. I think that grounding is the best biohacking tool, plus is free and available to everyone. Being in the nature barefoot is the best way to ground. When being outside in the nature is unavailable, I recommend to use 𝐿 product. They help you stay grounded indoor in the comfort of your home. For my community, 𝐿.com is offering a discount code. Just add on 𝐿.com and use the code SALUTE to get 10% off on all their grounding product. Clint, welcome to the show. It's a great honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. I'm really look forward to carrying on a discussion and trying as best we can to explain it, some things about earthing that will be of interest to everyone.
Thank you. So in this episode, we will understand how essential it is to be connected to the earth in order to restore and maintain health. We will talk about the science behind grounding and how it relates to modern disease and inflammation. But before we dive into today's topic, can you tell us about your story and how you got to where you are now?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it's, I just had a birthday on the 14th of July. I'm 79 years old.
Congratulations.
And so when I speak, of before television, sometimes, because I grew up in rural Montana and on a ranch where we had cattle. And so I spent a lot of time in nature. Mm-hmm. And then when in the 1950s, the war was over, World War II, and everybody came home. And before then, almost everybody was relatively poor, and we lived off the land. We grew what we ate, whether it was livestock or vegetables, anything out of the garden, of course. Mm-hmm. And but anyhow, so I have a very earthy background, mm-hmm. and I have spent a lot of time with my, living in nature, or working with animals and plants, and gardening, and all of these things are a second nature to me. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, in the 50s, we started migrating away from that because television came along. And in the early 50s, and then in about 1960, before then we were always barefoot, or we wore leather sole shoes, but in the late 1950s, they invented polymers, or the synthetic materials plastics. And the first thing that we did with them is we put them on the soles of shoes and carpeted our homes with plastic carpeting, and pretty much insulated ourselves, from physical contact with the earth. We were living in, just wearing plastic, living in plastic. And nobody thought too much about it because it was kind of nice to have TV, and it was nice to have, because before television, it would be hard to get us in the house at night. We would rather sleep in the barn and play with the animals, or play with our friends and whatever. But anyhow, when television came along, that all changed. And I think the thing about grounding that will come out here in our discussion is that when we started wearing synthetic sole shoes or rubber sole shoes, then we began insulating ourselves from the earth. And about the time television, we started spending more time indoors. And then when we were outdoors, now we had shoes on that insulated us. So we really kind of, at that time, that period of time, we lost our ground, or we lost our electrical connection with the earth. And so therein lies the story. But when I left, well, before, it's like in the animal husbandry, you spend your time in, we would run between 300 and 800 head of cattle. And so you spend a lot of time out in the pasture just riding with the herd or making sure they're healthy and okay. And for instance, if you had a cow that was sick or a calf, you would take them out of the herd, put them in a holding pen. Then you would go out and ride the pasture and make sure that the grass is not too short, the water's okay, there's not noxious weeds starting to grow. Because the concept was, if you have a sick animal, then something in the pasture is contributing to the ill health of that animal. So the idea is to keep the pasture clean and pristine, and then you'll have healthy animals and healthy food. So I grew up with this, prevention concept. So you look at, if there's something wrong, what caused it, rather than where do I get the Advil? And so on. So anyhow, I have this kind of an earthy background. And then I also grew up with Native Americans close by. And some of them were my best friends when I was young, very young. And they have a whole different concept of looking at the world. One of the biggest things is they don't really look at, don't quite understand ownership the way, Anglo do. Their whole concept is, how can you own a tree? How can you own land? It belongs to everybody. And so they were more communal, meaning they lived as a tribe and took care of each other, but they lived in harmony with the natural world. In nature. And so anyhow, that background is embedded in me, and I couldn't get rid of it if I wanted. But anyhow, after, in the early 1960s, I got involved in what they now call cable television. And we would, when the television stations were being built, they put them in the bigger towns, but in the smaller cities, there wasn't any television, or if there was, you had to have a translator, or you had to put a wire and an antenna up on a mountain and run a wire down the hill, and then connect it to the TV, or to a handful of people would get together and connect to the TV. So anyhow, I was always enamored with the advent of television, because for the first time I could see a bigger world than I was living in. I was living in a very rural area, very, you didn't have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of people, just family and other ranchers and farmers. And so it was, so whenever you turn the TV on, the first thing I ever saw was Felix the Cat and all those kind of things, of course. But then, but as television began to grow, they started to be able to import distant signals. Like, for instance, in Billings, Montana, you could bring down a signal from or up from Casper, Wyoming, or Helena, Montana, or cities, a few hundred miles away. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that was really different was the news. But it gave you a feeling like, wow, the world's bigger than my little town that I live in. Mm-hmm. And then as time went on, I just fell in love with that industry. And as time went on, we found out that satellites were stationary and we could bounce TV signals off of them. And so then we would, and I had been involved with the industry quite a while by then, but we could put distant signals like Atlanta, Georgia, WTBS from Atlanta, Georgia up on the satellite, and then we could deliver the signals to people living in Missoula, Montana. Mm-hmm. So, and then as that grew, that industry grew quite rapidly. But the thing I fell in love with was now, I can see the world for what it is. I can see how I relate to the world and so on, mm-hmm. and the world that I'm a part of. And I could see foreign news. I could see, it was an eye on the window on the world. Mm-hmm. And so that really intrigued me. And so I spent 30 years in that industry.
Wow.
But the significance of grounding, our discussion today, or earthing, mm-hmm. Which is probably a more technically correct word, is that if we were to run a wire into somebody's home, whether it was a telephone wire, a cable television wire, or any other wire, you had to ground the wire to the earth, and then before it went into the house, so that if there were any atmospheric charges like lightning, or that if it hit the cable or hit the lines, then it would be grounded out to the earth. Mm-hmm. The earth would absorb the charge. Mm-hmm. And then it became, as time went on, we needed better and cleaner signals. So to get rid of static electricity and to get rid of noise from other broadcasting facilities and local radio stations, TV stations. And so anyhow, we ended up developing a real need for grounding every single wire and all of the electrical appliances and devices, transmitters, receivers, so we could have stable electrical environments, so you could have good sound, good high quality pictures, and be able to today, for instance, have data and all of the internet services and so on. But anyhow, you have to have good, clean data. Mm-hmm. So you have to ground out all of the excess noise and prevent interference from whatever source. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, all that is to say, I had a 30-year background in the development of television, cable television, but much related to the grounding of these electrical systems, mm-hmm. in order to maintain electrical stability and deliver quality products. Mm-hmm. But that evolved over 30 years, and it kept improving and improving. But anyhow, when I was 50, I retired from the industry. I'd been in it 30 years, mm-hmm. and I retired, and I also had a health problem. At the time, I ended up with an abscess in a liver from a dental infection, and it almost took me out, but mm-hmm. I survived it and recovered. But anyhow, in the process of recovering, I just kind of let go of the business world, and I let go of chasing, playing king of the mountain with all the guys, mm-hmm. and chasing the money. And so I because I had a near-death experience, I really wasn't happy with. I was very successful, but I wasn't happy with just making my life about money and things and all the things that money can buy. And afterwards, I had an epiphany one day when I was in recovery that, I never owned all of the things that I had in my home and my art and cars and all of these things. Rather, I went out and bought them, brought them home, and then I spent my life taking care of them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you die or come close to death, then you recognize that, whoa, you don't get to take any of this with you, no matter what. You go alone.
Mm-hmm.
You come alone, you go alone. And it just sent a chill through my body, and I as a result, I wanted to make my life about something that I could be. Next time I die, I wanted to be able to be happy with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Happy that I was, my life is about more than just making money and chasing money. Mm-hmm. And then I spent about 4 years just driving around the United States. I sold everything I had, home, cars, everything, bought a small RV, spent 4 years driving around the United States, living primarily in national parks, mm-hmm. Which they let you stay 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Then you have to move to the next one or change spaces. But anyhow, one day I was realizing that, okay, it's time to go back to work and do something, because it's nice in nature, but it's a little boring sometimes. So anyhow, I was down in Key Largo, Florida, on the bay side of the Gulf of Mexico. Mm-hmm. And that night I had kind of an epiphany or something. I mean, it felt like nature was talking to me, like the earth was talking to me, saying, it's time to go. I didn't know do what, but to go back home and go to work and do something. Mm-hmm. And so I just headed back home. And along the way, I ended up in a little town called Sedona, Arizona. I was on my way to Flagstaff, and it was late one night, and I pulled into this little town, and it was dark, and I parked in the RV park, and I got up the next morning, looked outdoors, and I said, I'm not leaving here, because this is like living in a national park full time, mm-hmm. And because it's just a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up staying there for 2 years, but after I got settled, I needed something to do, and I had always collected Western art, mm-hmm. my whole life, and I had a huge collection of it. Most of it I had given away, and when I got rid of my home and those things, but I still loved art, mm-hmm. but I just didn't want to own it anymore. I didn't want to collect it and carry it around. So anyhow, I would go around to the art galleries in town, and a lot of them had really nice high-end art, and they had a lot of tourists, and so they had like 20, 30 galleries there. And one day they were having a special artist come to town that I knew from the past, and this person was becoming very famous. And so when I found out the gallery who was hosting this exhibit, I went over to him and I said, I know a lot about lighting art and a lot about this particular art, and I think I could come in and help you light your, present the art, mm-hmm. light the art, and so on. And it took me about a month, but finally they conceded and let me come in. And so what I did is they had about 200 lights hanging from the ceiling on the art that was there, mm-hmm. and you almost had to have a baseball cap to go around and look at the art because there were so many lights you couldn't see the art. Mm-hmm. And so anyhow, I went in there and I took down all of their lighting. I took down all of the art that was on the walls, and so it was just a nice, clean space. Then when they brought the exhibit in, I put the art up one piece at a time, spaced it so it had plenty of room, and then I lit each piece of art individually by itself. And so that when you were looking at that art, that's all you would see. And so you could feel the art, you could see the art, and it was, so anyhow, we hung about 30 paintings that day, and this is a fairly large gallery. And afterwards, every other art gallery owner in town came to that event because of the artist. And everybody asked, well, who did your lighting? Mm-hmm. Who did your lighting? And then all of a sudden, they thanked me for doing the presentation, and all the other art gallery owners came up and said, well, how do you do this? This is beautiful. Nobody's ever done something like this in Sedona. And so I ended up starting a little company called Best of Show, And all I did was light art gallery special events for art galleries from Scottsdale down to up to Taos, New Mexico, and so on. And very beautiful art. Really, it just talked to me. It was, but anyhow. So the point was, one day I was ordering some lighting material for a new gallery, and this is back in the 90s, so whenever I would try to type on the computer, sometimes they would freeze up and glitch up, and you'd have to shut them down, bring them back up, and then do it again, and sometimes it would keep working, and sometimes you'd have to do it several times. Anyhow, I recognized that it was static electricity on my body, that when I would touch my computer, the little electrical sparks, sometimes you can't see them, but it would cause the software to glitch, and then the computer would stop working. So I thought, well, I've got to fix this because I'm getting tired of it. So I went out and I took a half-inch a roll of tape, copper tape. It was a half-inch wide. I laid it across the top of my desk, connected it to a ground wire, plugged it into an electrical ground, and then before I would touch my computer, I would put my fingers on the tape, discharge the static electricity on my body, and then I could type on my computer, and it worked perfectly. So that that was my first entry back into electrical, other than helping the gallery owners. But anyhow, right after that, I went outdoors in Sedona, across the street from where I was working. There's a place called Tlaquepaque, and it's a very popular tourist attraction. And about that time, a big tour bus pulled up in front, and it was a Japanese tour group. And as they were getting off the bus, they were just kind of marching in single file, and they all had huge white tennis shoes on. And for some reason, I looked at the shoes, and I looked up at the power line or something, and I said, how come? I said, I wonder if there's a consequence to humans wearing these rubber-soled shoes. And I had been wearing cowboy boots most of my life because I grew up on a ranch, and they were leather. But the rubber-soled shoes, anytime I would try them on, whatever, my feet would sweat. And so I just didn't like them. But anyhow, the question popped into my mind. I wonder if there's any consequence to humans being no longer naturally grounded like we were when I was a kid, or even when I am with wearing leather shoes. And I didn't know, but that night I went home and I took some voltmeters out and I started measuring all of the static electricity in my home, which was huge amounts of static. Every time you move or do anything, you create static, especially if on your foam furniture or furniture that has all these materials in them. And you're like at night, the bed, when you roll over, you'll create static. But you don't see it. Oftentimes you don't feel it. Sometimes you will. But anyhow, so there's lots of static electricity. And then there was also all of this electromagnetic noise from the electrical wiring in the walls and all those kind of things. And I never measured this stuff before in that fashion. So I went upstairs to my bedroom, I laid down on the bed, and that was where I found the most problematic. So I got up immediately. It was about 8 o'clock at night. I went back to the hardware store and bought a roll of 3-inch wide metal duct tape, the aluminum type. And then I laid it across my bed, threw a wire out the window, connected it to the tape, and then connected the other end to a little ground rod going into the earth. And then I had a voltmeter, so I would lay on the tape. Whenever I laid on the tape, all the voltages and all the static and everything would go to zero. It would disappear. As soon as I got back up, then I could measure the voltages on my body. So I didn't think too much about it. I kept playing with it, and I thought it was really interesting. But the next thing I knew, it was morning. I was laying there, and I woke up. The meter was down by my side. I hadn't moved all night long. And at that time, I was 54 years old. I had skied for 30 years. I had played tennis. I was a cowboy. I had every kind of ache and pain that a man could have. And I often complained about all the pain. And I remember looking up one day, and in the backyard, and I say, God, why did you make my body with so much pain in it? But anyhow, I woke up and I thought, wow, there's something going on here. And so I thought it was just getting rid of the noise and everything. And so I kept doing it for a couple of nights, and then each night I slept better. And then I went over to one of my neighbor friends and told him about it. And I said, you need to try this because nobody sleeps anymore. And so we did. We fixed up his bed. We kind of ruined one of the sheets, and his wife wasn't very happy with us. But anyhow, he tried it, and a couple of days later, he come over and he says, this thing really works. And he says, but do you think it can have anything, can it be affecting my arthritis? And I said, I don't think so. And so then all of a sudden I realized that my pain, my chronic hot burning pain, had significantly diminished. And my energy was way up. I didn't have to take the Advil to go to sleep and so on. And so that's when I first recognized, I said, this is real. How come nobody knows about it? How come nobody's talking about it? How come somebody didn't tell me about this after all these years? And so that's kind of how it all got started.
I see. So,
and it's just a journey. I was on a journey. No purpose in mind. I wasn't thinking about grounding. I wasn't thinking about any of that. But because of my background in nature and my background in taking care of animals, and then being in the communication system, I just had a working knowledge of the electrical surface of the earth. So anyhow, that's you're more than welcome to interrupt me anytime.
So it's a real fascinating story. So I think it's about, yes, your background and also your mindset and the ability to see what's going on around you, to observe the reality with other eyes than people, the usual people. Correct.
Yeah, I was totally out of the box.
Yes.
And when I went to the universities and tried to do some research in the literature to find out why grounding affected pain and sleep, there was nothing whatsoever in the literature, nothing. And after a few months, I thought, well, this is important. People need to know about this because it's really free or inexpensive to do. And so I went out. I ended up going out to University or UCLA, University in Los Angeles, of California in Los Angeles. And I said, these guys will know everything because it's one of the biggest universities west of the Mississippi. And so I went out there and I ended up with people in the sleep lab. And one of the big guys comes in, one of the department heads comes in, he says, you expect us to believe that somebody's going to stick a nail in the ground, tie a wire around it, and tie a wire around somebody's toe, they're going to go to sleep? I mean, they're going to sleep better? He says, get out of here, you're nuts. And so anyhow, we did joke around a little bit, and I learned that I knew nothing about biology, but I also knew they knew nothing about electrical. And it was quite surprising. But anyhow, as time went on, they wouldn't do a study because it was just not the kind of thing they wanted to work with, cells and biology and those kind of things. And they said I needed more information before anybody would believe me. So I hired a couple of students down there and went up to Ventura, California, and learned how to do a study. We pulled together a group of 60 people. Half of them we grounded, half of them were not grounded. They were double blind or blinded. And then we grounded them for a month. And then we went back and we had a nurse that went back and interviewed them and brought back the materials and recorded all the data. And as an end result, everybody who had been sleeping grounded on a live grounding mat, their sleep improved and they had significant reduction of pain. But they also mentioned things like PMS going away and TMJ and their energy coming back and just a host of other things that we didn't ask. And then the people who were not grounded, a few of those didn't even continue to the end of the study, which was like 30 days, 6 weeks. And so we recognize, okay, now we have some evidence anecdotally that this is real, and we have 30 people that are telling us it's working, or that it's affecting them.
And
so then,
and Clint, I interrupt you just to make people understand. Maybe people who are listening, they don't know what's grounding, also known as earthing. Can you explain how it works and how you measure?
Yeah, this would be a good point for that. Earthing means to stick something in the earth. You're earthing. You take a rod and you put it in the earth, pound it into the earth. So that would be called an earthing rod. A ground rod is a slang term for earthing, but when it's in the earth, it's actually in the earth. And grounding is just to have two metal objects at the same electrical potential. And so people look at the earth and but anyhow, so I call it earthing because technically that's the correct name for it. But anyhow, so when you drive a rod into the earth, then the earth has an electrical surface charge, and it's created by the sun. The sun radiates energy, photons, and electrons, and so they radiate to the earth. If you were in space, in the middle of space, in looking at the sun, you would not feel any heat. You would be you'd be cold. You'd be freezing. But so heat doesn't come from the sun. What comes from the sun is radiation, and this radiation is electrical charges that excites. It's like when you put your arm in the sun, then you feel warm because that's the radiation from the sun hitting your body, and it causes warmth. I don't want to get too far into that technical, but anyhow, but these electrons and photons that come from the sun, they create a surface charge on the surface of the earth, an energy, an electrical, like a battery has a charge. The earth itself is like a huge battery, like a capacitor. It can hold charge, and then it equalizes around the surface of the globe. So anytime you put an earthing rod in the earth, then that rod will equalize with the earth and maintain the electrical surface, the electrical energy of the earth. So if we run it into our homes, and most every home in the world is grounded now, so you have a third wire. It's not part of the electrical. It's connected to the earth, and it goes into your home, and then at your outlet you'll have a ground portion, and that's usually connected to the chassis of a refrigerator or appliance or something. So, and the reason is, in case there's an electrical event, a wire gets shorted or whatever, it'll blow a fuse and prevent any harm from happening to an individual. So it's really to prevent fire and to prevent electrical damage from an electrical event. So anyhow, that's why everything is grounded, electrically grounded to the earth. So when you connect these appliances to the earth via ground, then they absorb the electrical surface charge of the earth and maintain the same voltage as the earth, which is negative charge, meaning it has free electrons. They can rapidly move and reduce radicals or charge, and in this case, an electrical event. So it's kind of technical, and it's really simple, but it's not. But anyhow, the earth maintains an electrical surface energy, and from the beginning of time, the first amoeba that ever crawled up, on Earth, was grounded, because anything that was touching the earth from the beginning of time and that grew out of the earth, or the animals that live on the earth that eat they're always touching the earth. So, and up until about, a couple hundred years ago, by and large, humans, the large majority, we slept within inches of the earth, and we slept in caves. We walked barefoot. We lived barefoot. We were, electrically in touch with the earth because our bodies are electrical in nature, just like the earth. But and throughout all time, as we evolved, or as everything evolved, then we always maintained that electrical energy of the earth on our bodies, all plants, all animals, and so on. So, so what happened? It's like when I started grounding people or earthing people. If they had pain in their body, or they weren't sleeping well, the pain would go away, and then they would go to sleep. And so this grounding was affecting the body. It was affecting sleep, and it was reducing pain. So I knew there was a connection between touching the earth and not touching the earth. And then when I started measuring it and doing the research and the science, we learned quickly that, and it was about 2004, when they first started publishing papers on inflammation. Okay. One of the first ones was published in Time magazine in 2004, yep. And it showed a picture of the body on fire, and then below it had the word inflammation, and it said, you do not have cancer, you do not have cardiovascular disease, you don't have lupus, MS, all of these modern health disorders. What you have, they said, what you have is chronic inflammation. And this inflammation and at that time they did not know the cause of inflammation. They just knew that the body, the immune system was oxidizing healthy tissue, and the immune system they called it autoimmune disorder. Inflammation-related health disorders and autoimmune disorder. And so what happened, and it was about 2006 when we were doing a study, and again, because I have a background in grounding to maintain electrical stability, and knowing at this point in time that the body is the most electrical thing on planet Earth, because every single cell in the body is electrical. They all interact. They can transmit information. They can receive information. You have groups of cells that make up organs. They all are energetic. They all are electrical in nature, and they function. Your brain is electrical. Your muscles. Everything is electrical, and it's chemical second. In the world I grew up, everything was physical first, then electrical. But anyhow, so one day I was working on a paper, and we had been doing a lot of research along the way. But the search that what we were really searching for was what causes inflammation? Why does grounding make pain go away? Why does putting your foot on the earth and grounding your body to be barefoot to the earth, why does that reduce inflammation in the body? And so one day I was reading a paper, and I came across how a neutrophil, how the white blood cells, how the immune system is composed of a band of white blood cells, and one of the main ones is a neutrophil. It's just a little jelly-type cell that if you have a pathogen in your body, it will swim over. Somehow it knows. It swims over and it sees the pathogen, and it's kind of a jelly cell, and it'll wrap itself around the pathogen, and then it releases what we call reactive oxygen species. And when I read that term reactive, that's when I recognized that the immune system was electrical because the word reactive means it's electrically charged. It has such a significant electrical charge that it can actually strip electrons from the pathogen and destroy it. That's how the immune system works. So for the first time, that's when I recognized that inflammation was because these reactive oxygen species. So then the next step was, well, how did they create inflammation? So then, just using cowboy logic, when you ground the body to the earth and pain goes away, well, what I learned from inflammation, you can't have pain unless you have inflammation first, because inflammation is a message from your body that you're on fire, or the pain is a message that your body's on fire and you need to move or get grounded or something. So anyhow, then all of a sudden it dawned on me that, well, when the body is ungrounded or not grounded or wearing shoes, and you've gone a long time without being grounded, then the body loses the free electrons, the ground energy. And so all I was doing from the day one was grounding myself to the earth, like I had grounded cable systems and everything else forever. And as soon as I did that, then the free electrons from the earth migrated into my body and maintained my body at the same electrical potential of the earth, which is negative about 20, 30 millivolts, meaning there's an excess of free mobile electrons that can rapidly move. And so then, just again, using cowboy logic, I said, okay, so what we're doing when we ground somebody, it's like pouring water on a fire. We're pouring earth electrons on the inflammation, and the inflammation is disappearing. So then we began to realize that the cause of inflammation is that the body is no longer naturally grounded. It no longer maintains the free electron charge of the earth. So when you lose that, then the immune system is going to keep working 24/7. Anytime there's a pathogen or virus or anything, the immune system is going to go do what it normally does. It finds the pathogen and it releases an oxidative burst of these radicals, and then they go and they strip the electrons of the pathogen and destroy it. But if there are any remaining radicals after the oxidative burst, they're going to reduce and they're going to find something that they can steal an electron from in a few nanoseconds, steal an electron from it, in this case a healthy cell, damage it. Then the immune system gets another message, well, something's still here and more damage, so it goes and it cleans up the cell that was damaged, and then in that process there's still not enough free electrons, so it sets up a chain reaction. And so the body's on fire, just like burning a log.
And in your book, you say that everything in the human body is electrical. We are a carbon-based electron unit, and certain parts of human body are more conductive than others. Can you explain this concept and why we need to protect the electrical stability in our body?
Well, first of all, the Earth has always had this negative charge, and then as long as we were in contact with the Earth, or any plant, as long as you're in contact with the Earth, then your body is charged with these free electrons that can just move. They're attracted to charge. If there's a charge, then the free electron will automatically gravitate to it and reduce it. That's a natural electrical phenomenon. It's been going on since the beginning of the universe. And but living on Earth and being charged with Earth's electrical potential, then no charge can exist in the human body. So inflammation is charge, it's fire, it's an electrical fire. And so, and to put this in perspective, maybe a little better way to explain it, if you look at the animals who live in the wild, cancer by and large does not exist in the animal population unless humans come and destroy their environment.
Okay.
On the other hand, animals who live indoors with their owners, they all manifest similar autoimmune-related health disorders as their owners. For instance, cancer is an inflammation-related health disorder. Nearly 50% of all animals who live indoors die from cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you an idea. So what we're talking about here, inflammation is an environmental health disorder.
Mm-hmm.
We changed our environment. We used to live on the earth. In fact, we are the earth up walking around. We breathe the earth, we drink the earth, we eat the earth, and when our life is done, we go back to the earth. So yes, so electrons don't travel just freely, loosely in the body. Everything in the body is, managed or gated. So it's like, but your heartbeat, a lot of it's like, an example would be MS. If you have MS, then the myelin sheath that wraps around the nerves, that is not conductive, and electrons can't get in or out of that. But if you have damaged myelin sheath, then the immune system will try to fix it, and in the process, it will, reduce the damaged cells, but in the process, it's creating more damage to the adjacent cells, and so MS kind of gets worse and worse and worse, mm-hmm. because it's a fire that's just chronically smoldering from the not being grounded. But if you take a person with MS and put a patch on their hand, an electrode patch, or just put their hand in the dirt and keep it there, then all of a sudden the pain will begin to subside. The blood viscosity will normalize, like the animals in the wild, mm-hmm. And then so at that point, when the pain starts to come down and the blood thins and everything, then you've stopped the inflammation.
Okay. Yeah.
It just automatically stops. You grounded it out. You prevented. See, like I was trying to say, you can't have inflammation in a grounded object. Mm-hmm. An amplifier or a human or an animal. Mm-hmm. But when you disconnect from the earth, there's not enough free electrons to reduce these remaining radicals. Mm-hmm. And then the radicals just keep doing damage and keep doing damage. And if it goes uncontrolled for too long, it starts out as anxiety, irritability, depression, then it goes on to fibromyalgia, then it goes on to lupus, MS, some hosts of the autoimmune family, disease family, and then your arthritis, your cardiovascular disease, cancer, and the like. Mm-hmm. Because health is the body's most natural state, and if you don't have health, then something you're doing is interfering with the immune system's ability to maintain health.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. And can you give us some tips for optimal grounding? What is the best surface for grounding purpose, and how much should we as humans be grounding to stay healthy?
Well, in nature, you would be grounded 24/7.
Okay.
And that's just the way it is.
Yes.
And you cannot have inflammation. Mm-hmm. If you stay grounded outdoors or in some fashion. So I always tell everybody any amount of grounding is good. More grounding is better. Mm-hmm. And what I really try to tell people is if you have pain in your body, any kind of chronic ongoing pain, then you need to get grounded and stay grounded until the pain subsides. Some people who are suffering from a debilitating health disorder, they need to spend maybe 16 hours a day or more grounded. On the other hand, you have to look at your lifestyle, how you live, where you live, and all of those kind of things, and try to find ways in which you can spend more time grounded. But I want to add one thing that I think is really important. It's a side effect, but one of the questions that should be asked is, what causes the inflammation? Mm-hmm. I mean, what is the primary cause of inflammation? Mm-hmm. And most people would think, well, it's because you're not grounded. That is true. That's what allows it to run amok. But what's causing inflammation is the average, and especially women, the average woman gets up in the morning, if she's got a couple of kids and a husband, first thing that happens, she's got to take care of them, and there's chaos. Getting them bed, getting them off to school, getting husband, getting organized for the day. And then when everybody's gone, then the woman has to take a break, maybe get a cup of coffee, and then take care of herself and get ready, and maybe she's going to work or doing whatever she does. And I'm speaking very broadly here. And then she gets in a car, drives to work, whatever. But all this time she's been ungrounded. But what happens in the morning, the first thing that gets up when one of the kids comes in and screams, "Mommy, I'm hungry," whatever, then all of a sudden it's kind of like your fight or flight system kicks in. And there's a little squirt of cortisol. And then the second child comes over, another squirt. Then all of a sudden panic. I've got to get up. I got to get to work. So your body starts flooding with cortisol. And as the day goes on, you become fatigued. You go to work. You got the static electricity. You got the fabrics on the. Just a host of things. But you're never in touching the earth, and so your body is short of electrons. You got a lot of metabolic activity going on. But anyhow, this cortisol, as it builds, it starts out creating anxiety, irritability, and oftentimes depression and fatigue and loss of just energy. And then you get up and go drive home and have to fix dinner and whatever. So the women are the ones who primarily experience these autoimmune diseases more so than anyone else. But in nature, the animals, they're always grounding out the stress. And they can't have the inflammation. But the humans, we are insulated from the earth. So as our bodies flood with cortisol, then as time goes on, this creates inflammation, creates pain. The pain creates more anxiety, irritability, and it's just a vicious circle. So the longer a person stays ungrounded and maintains this cortisol and whatever, then it really promotes a lot of the health disorder. But so anyhow, it's what I've learned over the years, 25 years of grounding primarily women, is the number one cause of inflammation is mental. Meaning the stress of life, having to deal with all the stresses in our body, forever producing cortisol, fight or flight, because the body is being stressed more than ever. And every day it gets worse and worse and worse. And so it's really our environments. So we've disconnected from the earth. We lost our ground protection, which would reduce a lot of that inflammation and prevent a lot of it, except that it can't. And then the body's flooded with inflammation, and then the immune system craters, and it begins trying to put the fire out that it itself is creating, and it's just a vicious circle until the body craters. But so what you think and how you let other people interact with you, and pushing buttons and panic buttons and all those things, it's important to really learn how to manage and control the fight or flight responses.
Great. Thank you for this explanation. And in one of your earliest studies, you find out that grounding regulates the hormone cascade. Can you tackle on this fascinating topic?
Yes. What we found in one of the first clinical studies that we did is we took a group of women, and I think there were some guys in that too, but it was primarily focused on the women, and they were on different age groups. And what we did is we measured cortisol. We had them chew a saliva that captured the cortisol secretion, and then we would freeze them. So we would measure that every 4 hours for 24 hours, and then we'd send them to a lab. And then a month, 6 weeks later, we did that again. And then when we got the results, we found that cortisol is, you have to have cortisol because it's what allows you the energy to get up and get out of bed in the morning. But anyhow, at midnight, cortisol is generally the lowest, 10 o'clock, midnight, until about 4 a.m. If anybody is not sleeping at night, is because their cortisol is elevated.
Mm-hmm.
The reason their cortisol is elevated is because of what they're thinking about or what they're stressing about, their fight or flight system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but anyhow, normally your cortisol, or what we found after the study is, before everybody's cortisol was like spaghetti. It didn't really match up, and everybody's was a little bit different and was all over the place. But after we grounded them for, after the study, then everybody's cortisol synchronized into a band that was lowest around 10 o'clock at night until about 4 a.m. And at 4 a.m. it just began to skyrocket. Mm-hmm. And at 6 a.m. that was the highest level of the day. And then throughout the rest of the day, it would just slowly drift down until it was pretty much depleted around 10 o'clock. And then cortisol was, it synchronized. They all synchronized, like they were all in harmony. They didn't know each other. They were tens of miles of living apart, so there was no other connection. And so this one is really stunning to us. But what intrigued us the most was at 4 a.m. when the cortisol begins to skyrocket, there's no mechanism or no cueing device, nothing signaling. It wasn't daylight because the sun hadn't come up yet. There wasn't any noise. There wasn't any light. There wasn't anything in the environment that says, okay, cortisol's time to spike. Mm-hmm. We did figure it out later, but that's another story. But so anyhow, then we realized that by connecting the human body to the earth, that it synchronized the cortisol secretion profiles for every person identically. And so we knew that being connected to the earth normalized cortisol secretion profiles. Mm-hmm. That was a huge finding because we didn't expect it, we didn't understand it, but the more we did it, but if your cortisol is quiet, then you're sleeping. Everybody slept better, so that we attributed it to the cortisol being stabilized, and so on and so on. Everybody having more energy when they got up in the morning. Mm-hmm. They could get out of bed rather than drag themselves out of bed. Yeah. For the most part, they looked years younger.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
If grounding the body to the earth and the rhythms of the earth are playing the tune that the cortisol secretion is dancing to, then it means and it implies that every other hormone in the body is also regulated in some way, because cortisol is a master hormone. And so, but our body is full of hormones and it's full of all these things, and we're dancing with the rhythms of the earth and the circadian rhythms of the planets and the seasonal patterns and everything. So everything is having an effect on us, but these are things that we were born into. They were here before we got here. And so our body adapted to all of these things and depends on them to signal or ground or provide the metronome, for the symphony that the body is dancing to.
Wow, it's so fascinating. And how does grounding normalize also blood viscosity? What happens with the blood if you don't have enough free electrons?
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing. What we found was that we would take and draw blood from the people, and we'd look under a white field and a dark field microscopes. And most everybody's blood is kind of clumpy. You'll see groups of red blood cells all clumped together. And so the blood is thick and sticky. It's why so many people have to take blood thinners and so on. And so as soon as in our first study, we grounded everybody for 2 hours. And what we found was at the end of 2 hours, the electrical surface charge on the red blood cells increased by 270%. So that would be like comparing ketchup to red wine. So your blood is like red wine when you are grounded. And when you're not grounded, it gets thick and sticky. So when it's thick and sticky, it can't get into the capillaries. easily because the blood cells have to go in single file. And so, so as soon as you thin the blood, well, as soon as you increase the surface charge on the blood, then they're more negative. So now they're like little negative magnets. They repel each other and push each other apart. And so that's what causes the blood to thin. So blood is electrical. And but the most important thing was is just the fact that touching the earth normalizes blood viscosity. And we caution a lot of people who are on heavy blood thinners and Coumadin and so on. You have to pay attention because your blood can get too thin, because that's what Coumadin and all these drugs do, is they try to thin the blood so it can get in and out of the capillaries. Or if you stand barefoot on the earth, it happens instantly, automatically, and it's free.
Yeah.
But that's an important study. You can find that study at the earthinginstitute.net, and along with a host of probably 50 other studies. And but it is the most important study because blood is everything.
Yeah.
Blood is everything. But again, your immune system, it's, the body is a symphony. It's a whole bunch of things doing their own thing at the same time, but also in coordination with everything. So the body is systemic, meaning you affect one thing, it's going to affect everything. So it's, it's just, so the message that I came out of all of this research, all of this work, was that just like the cattle in the pasture, health is free as long as you keep the pasture clean and pristine. Well, today we have totally stepped away from nature. Our food is so processed, and I'm speaking here in the U.S., it's horrible. Everything is processed and packaged and whatever. We're no longer naturally grounded to the earth. We no longer eat food in season, in harmony with the rhythms of the earth. So we've totally stepped away from nature, and we're paying the price. Everybody's sick. In 1960, when they first started making plastic shoes, over 90% of the visits to a practitioner were for infectious disease, childbirth, and acute injury. Today, 99% of all visits to a practitioner are for inflammation-related health disorders.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And so we've changed our environment. We lost our ground. We've lost our green. We've lost all these things, and they're a part of us. We are a part of the earth, and we're all in this together, all living things. And so anyhow, it's to find the truth about health, you have to look to nature. You have to look to the wild animals. You have to look to the domesticated animals that live outdoors. They pretty much have health. The indoor animals, they're all suffering. The indoor humans are all suffering. So that means that this is an environmental health disorder. We changed our environment. We left nature by and large, and we insulated ourselves from the planet, and we killed all of our food.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, animals in the wild, they eat a lot less than we do because they're eating better nutrition. Their immune systems function much better because they don't have inflammation. They live out normal lives. So it's really, we just have to go down by the creek, sit by the creek, watch the animals, and it's crystal clear what's going on and what we need to do. And you can't necessarily change your life and change where you live and do all these things, but you can spend more time in nature, and you can recognize the importance of it and how essential it is. And then we do have these little mats and things that we've made when we were doing our studies to ground people during our studies, but that people can sleep on. If you can't do anything else, that's probably one of the more important things you can do. Very inexpensive. And I don't like to sell product, and I'm not trying to, but I'm trying to suggest that if you can't ground yourself, then there are options But you do need to spend some time in nature to learn and experience it. And once you realize the significant effect that it has on your health, then it is important for you to find ways to ground yourself, especially during sleep, because that's when the body heals and restores. You don't want to have inflammation in your body when your body's trying to recover.
Mm-hmm. So you put together a family of simple products that people can use to ground indoors. Can you explain how they are designed and how they work?
They're primarily mats. They're carbon mats. They're thin, and you put them over the top of your mattress, and they're generally the size of the mattress. So there are some that are just single universal type. But anyhow, and they're conductive. The carbon is conductive, and then they have a grid underneath, but they're very thin, and you hardly notice them once they're on your. But then they have a connector, and then you connect a ground cord to that, an earthing cord. And then you go over and, I think you have perfect grounds in Italy and in most of those countries. So then you can connect to the electrical ground. You have to have they have adapters that you use for the different types of electrical outlets. But you plug it into the electrical ground and connect it to the sheet, the carbon sheet. And then if your health is very compromised, you're in trouble, then lay down on it, stay on it until you get well. But normally you put a sheet over the top of it, and then you just lay down and go to sleep like you do every night. You don't have to do anything. And even though the sheet is not conductive, you do perspire all night long. And the moisture that builds up inside your covers and on your body and your pajamas and the sheet are sufficiently conductive to conduct earth ground to and through the body. But they're primarily the size of the bed. And then we have one that I think it's like 13 inches by 30 inches. And so you can use it for a desk mat. You can sit on it, put your feet on it. And a lot of people sleep on it because it's smaller in size, and they don't have to mess with the sheets and everything. They just put it in their bed and lay down and go to sleep. And again, you don't have to do anything because you just lay down and go to sleep. And the results are profound. I mean, they're beyond profound. It returns, the body. If you remove the stress, the things that are interfering with the immune system's ability to maintain health, if you remove them, then the immune system only knows one thing: to return the body to normal. And I've seen so many things. I've seen cartilage grow back. I've seen things that are not supposed to happen. But the immune system is powerful. All you have to do is remove the things that are stressing the immune system's ability to maintain health, and then health is automatic. It's a birthright.
And for what purpose did you develop grounding path?
The grounding patch?
Yes.
The patch is just an EKG type patch, electrode patch. And like if you have an acute injury, like in a hand, or you have carpal tunnel, or you have, lupus or something that's really aggressive, then you just take and put the patch near the site of the pain, and then usually in 5-10 minutes the pain is gone. That doesn't mean it's like if you have MS, the pain will stop almost instantly, but that doesn't mean you're healed, because there's a lot of damage that's been done. But the hot burning pain stops. That means the inflammation has stopped. So now the immune system needs to recover and restore the tissue. And in some people that may take hours, days, weeks. Some people it may take a year, depending on how much damage was done. But as long as you stay grounded more than not grounded, then you're going to be returned to normal.
And have you done any studies on the HRV and vagal tone?
Yes, we've done a lot of studies on HRV. As soon as you get grounded and stay grounded, the first thing that happens, if you have an HRV that is wide-ranging, then that means that you can get up from a chair and you don't have to take an extra breath, or you don't have to push yourself up, but you have oxygen can easily flow, and your heart can pump, and you can respond to anything. If your heart rate variability is low, that means your heart is tight, and you have to move slowly, and it's just so anyhow, as soon as you get grounded and stay grounded for any length of time, your blood viscosity is going to normalize, thin the blood, and that's going to allow oxygen to flow more freely in the body, and the heart rate variability will begin to increase. But depending on what kind of damage has been done to your vascular system, it takes time to recover, and it does take a proper diet to really restore these things. But any cardiologist can guide you very simply. They can test your heart rate variability, and if you have obesity as a problem, exercise is one of the answers, and eating healthy food is really quite simple. It's getting back to nature.
And what did your study show for kids with disorders?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing that word.
What did your study show for children with disorders?
Oh, children.
Yes.
Children. Yeah, that's one of the things I spend a lot of time working with is children and teachers. And what we found was most in the U.S., a lot of children are diagnosed with somewhere on the spectrum of, and a lot of kids are, they give them Adderall, or they're high anxiety, and it's hard for them to sit still and so on, and then you have a lot of children with that are suffering some level of autism or some variable, and they're all different. But anyhow, we found that if we ground people early, when autism shows up, I'm talking rather quickly, then the immune system can recover and stop the ongoing damage. If you don't ground, then we kind of know what happens. But anyhow, grounding of children it's absolutely essential. When we were children, we lived outdoors barefoot on the earth. And the only time we would wear shoes was when we were in the fields working or something like that, or we just had to wear shoes because of customs and so on. But when you take the shoes off the children and let them go play, and of course you have to worry about sticks and glass and everything else in the world, but you have to kind of figure out what you want here. If you want health, then you have to maintain. These children need to be grounded, because what happens with children is very simple. They're hyperactive, and especially the boys. The boys have there's twice as many boys with autism as girls. But if you watch the boys and watch the girls, you can kind of see why. But they're and they create a lot of inflammation in their bodies. Boys do. And they may have had something that promoted it. It could have been this, or it could have been that, or any one of 100 things. But anyhow, once if they go to bed at night, they're not grounded, and that inflammation remains in the body, then it can set off a cytokine storm, which is the white blood cells. And then the white blood cells, or the cytokine, they will oxidize the damaged tissue, and in the process create damaged tissue. And so you create what they call a cytokine storm. And that's what underlies autism and all of these respiratory health disorders. You take somebody with COPD and put a patch on each side of their lungs, one up near the top of the chest, and within 30 seconds they can breathe. Where before they've been hacking for a month and can't even get a breath of air. But as soon as you ground the body, it shuts down and stops the cytokine storm, and then the immune system can slowly recover, and then it all settles down, and then the immune system can set about restoring. And lungs will go back to normal in less than 5 years if you're grounded. The body is a self-healing mechanism. It's a miracle machine. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
But anyhow, the children are. It's kind of hard to talk about the health on children because so many people who are taking care of children whose health is compromised. It's like it's go to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. I mean, your life is set. And it's painful and it's really challenging to live with taking care of adolescents that are their health is compromised. So, but anyhow, the main thing to do is by grounding them under any circumstances at any stage, you reduce the inflammation in their body, you keep them grounded, then they will recover. I don't know, depending on how much damage is done, the type of damage. They may not fully recover, but they're not going to be sick as much. They're going to sleep better. They're going to feel better. They won't have the high anxiety. It's like these kids. They wake up in the morning. They put on rubber-soled tennis shoes. They walk across carpet. They do whatever, and they don't take those shoes off until they go to bed at night. And some of them don't even do that. But these kids are insulated from the earth 24/7, and their bodies are electrically charged. They are wired. They're wired to the limit, and their nervous systems go crazy, and then you have this hyperactive child, and in some places they want to tie him to a chair, whatever, or stuff him full of drugs. But that's not normal. That's not natural. It's the environment that these kids are in. They're sitting there in a classroom with carpet generally on the floor, with fluorescent lights over their heads. There's no way for them to reduce even the metabolic radicals. The radicals that are generated by metabolic processes, because these kids are growing, they're hyper, and they need to be grounded. They need to ground out the stress. They need to ground out, all of the inflammation, and they all return to normal. I mean, health is the body's most natural state. The earlier you understand that, the better off you are. Because, like I said, I'm 79 now. And there's a few things I wish I had done differently because they talk to me today. but still, I'm healthy. I can walk 5 miles. I can do anything. I still work on the average 10, 12 hours a day. I'm on podcasts around the world 2 or 3 times a week. And I'm doing seminars, I'm doing retreats, and so, but like I tell everybody, you can have health just like health as good as I have or better if you just take them shoes off and keep them off long enough for your body to put out the fire so it can restore the body to normal.
I have still a few questions for you. Why grounding is very important for people who has done some sort of radiation therapy?
Well, what radiation does is it kills weak cells in the body. Like, for instance, cancer cells are weaker than normal cells. So in that process, a lot of the normal cells get damaged. And so it creates heat in the body. But if you get grounded immediately after radiation, then you will instantly feel a cooling effect come over the body. The body will actually feel like it's cooling down. The burning and the pain will subside. And it's just the body reducing the inflammation from the radiation.
And many professional athletes are practicing grounding to recover. Can you share with us some of their feedback?
Well, we have grounded Tour de France riders probably 8 out of the last 12 years. And we would have, crews go from hotel to hotel the day before the peloton arrived, and they would ground the beds and everything and set up a grounding triage center. And so if they had any scrapes or, the wrecks or whatever, they have road burn and just total exhaustion. So anyhow, what we did there is we had what we called recovery bags, or it was just a sheet. It was folded over with a zipper so they could stay inside of it all night long. And then we would put patches on their body. Some people would have a dozen patches on wherever the injuries, near the site of injury. And so instantly it would reduce the pain, and then they could sleep, and then the body could, because there's no inflammation in the body, then the body can recover. Usually they would recover in about 30-40% of the time that it would normally take to recover from a normal injuries along the way. And most of all, they finished, it's like Team Discovery, the last year that I was involved with it, you know, in all of them, all the riders finished the race, which is unheard of, you know, in the ones that slept grounded. But anyhow, so they had better sleep, more energy. They had just faster recovery. Just the fact that they could recover from some of these injuries was just remarkable. And a lot of that's on film, I think, on some of the, you know, on YouTube, you can see some of the Tour de France grounding events. And, but anyhow, so as soon as we started grounding the Tour de France riders, then all of a sudden it started to spread. So we started grounding mostly the high-end athletes, and they would not share what they were doing with anybody. It was a secret in their bag of tricks. But, you know, first of all, grounding would be embarrassing for them to talk about it because not many people understood it. Today, they talk about it all the time. But anyhow, the main thing is for recovery. It was all about recovery, faster, better recovery. And that was the mantra with the athletes, whether it was baseball, basketball, football, soccer, you name it. All of those that are using grounded, and there's several hundred of the more elite athletes out there, golfers, all of them, they all use grounding, but to them it's for recovery.
Yeah. In the biohacking community, people often ground after a flight. Why is it so important to ground in those cases?
Yeah, the reason for that is because when we did the cortisol study that I talked about earlier, we learned that, you know, that at 4 a.m. the cortisol skyrockets until about 6 a.m. And then it does its normal circadian unwind. And so what we found was, when we did that study, we had 3 stewardesses as part of the original study, and their cortisol was 3 hours off from the local participants. The reason was they lived in New York and they laid over in San Diego 3 or 4 days a week. That's why they were in the study, to give them something to do. And so anyhow, when we got the study back and we saw that, then after we grounded them, then within 15-20 minutes, their cortisol would normalize to the local time. So the rhythms of the earth, or where you are on the earth, if you fly from San Diego to New York, there's a 3-hour difference, so your cortisol is off 3 hours. So when you say you have jet lag, you feel like you have acid in your blood, and that's because your cortisol is off. So all you have to do is touch the earth for 15 minutes, bare feet on the earth, or as long as you want. And what it does is it resets the cortisol secretion profile, the circadian rhythm. So it has to do with the planet. It has to do where you are on the earth. And so to eliminate jet lag, prevent jet lag, just ground yourself for 15 minutes after you get off the plane to the earth. Ground yourself to the earth. It can be a damp sidewalk or grass or anything. Go when you check into the room, go outdoors, sit out on the patio with your bare feet on the concrete if you have to.
And last question, do you have any particular message that you want to spread to our listener and those people who are skeptical about
Well, it's the people who are skeptical about grounding. I've been doing this for 25 years. I invested probably huge amounts of money that I don't care to mention to support the science and to support the universities and the people who participated in the studies. And we have, there's probably 40, 50 peer-reviewed published studies. I don't expect anybody to read them ever, except for the scientists who are doing further research on earthing. We have dozens of peer-reviewed papers by scientists and people who publish scientific papers trying to explain it. Mm-hmm. And the main reason I used to, first of all, our customer in the United States is 99% female. Mm-hmm. She's between the ages of 25 and probably 60 now. Mm-hmm. And so she starts out young with some kind of health challenges. And by the time she has the first child, and then sometime in the 30s, the autoimmune disease shows up. And then when she gets a little older, then she's got to take care of her mom, who is on meds and needs management. And then otherwise, the older mom learns about grounding, experiments with it a little bit, and then she comes back and grounds her daughter, who has MS or lupus or heaven only knows what. So I went early on, I recognized that the men all have really a huge ego problem with grounding, because they say, this is so simple that if it were true, I would already know about it. Somebody would have told me. Mm-hmm. And I say, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I just learned about it myself 25 years ago. And there's a lot of people. But anyhow, so the point is, women don't really care about the science as much. What they care about is what they feel, what they experience, what the results are. Mm-hmm. So if you ground a woman with MS for 5 minutes and her pain goes away, she says, oh my God, and said, why didn't somebody tell me about this? Mm-hmm. And then the first thing that she does, the average woman who buys an earthing product from us in the United States or in Europe, she will buy probably a dozen different products herself out of her own disposable income. She will buy it because it's too difficult to go explain to everybody what it is and why it works. She just buys the products, and she says if her mom's not well, she'll go ground her mom. If it's her sister or if it's a girlfriend or whatever, she will buy the products and give them to them and tell them to use them. Just use it. Just lay down and get well. Mm-hmm. And it works. Mm-hmm. And the reason they keep buying is because it works. And so moms, almost all moms are caregivers. Mm-hmm. They are the ones who take care of the family, take care of the health of the family. Men go out and win the war and fight the wars and chase the money, and their lives are different. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, health is the mother thing, and so anytime you can provide a tool that they can sit on it for 5 minutes and pain goes away, they say, oh my God, give me two. I need one for my mom and I need one for me. Mm-hmm. That's the mantra that I hear most of all. Mm-hmm. And then people whose health is debilitating, they want to go stand in the street and scream at everybody to get grounded. Yeah. But we do now. 25 years ago, we worked on the science for a long time, and all we did was really try to produce the science. But as time went on, and we did the studies, people who participated in the studies, they all wanted to take the products or the mats we used in the studies. They wanted to take them home. Mm-hmm. And we let them use them because we couldn't do anything with them anyway once they'd been used. And then they would come back and they want one for their mother and so on. And then all of a sudden this was an accidental business that evolved, because I'm the first guy that ever put data over a satellite and fit it to a personal computer. That's my background, and grounding and everything related. Selling bed pads and stuff, I never dreamt in my life ever that I would be doing something like this. Mm-hmm. But today we send out we ship thousands of earthing products around the world, and they're mostly referrals from women who have been grounded that are buying them. They're telling a friend to buy it, but generally they're buying it until they can get their whole family grounded, and it's because of the health of the family. So I don't worry about the men. I just kind of let the men do their thing. If they show up and they want to get grounded, I tell them all, you're going to get grounded sooner or later, no matter what. But if you want to get grounded early and not, get rid of some of the pain and some of the chronic health disorder, and just have more energy and a little happier life, then take your shoes off. It's free. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to tell anybody. You can sneak in the backyard when nobody's watching and do it, and know. And then occasionally, if your wife puts a bed sheet on the bed on her side, and all of a sudden you see her looking younger, having more energy, and you're laying there in ache and pain, can't sleep, then put your hand over there or touch her leg, because she'll automatically ground you. But it's not, you can't force anybody to buy this product. This product is something you have to hear about and say, well, that's interesting, it's crazy, it's interesting. And then you have to experience it. When you say experience it, you say, oh my God, why didn't somebody tell me about this?
Thank you, Clint. Thank you, Clint, for your wisdom and for your time. I can feel that you have this passion to share with humans and with all the people around the world. So thank you very much.
Yeah, this is a mission. It's not about chasing dollars. It's really a mission. It's really important for the young people to be grounded. The young moms need to be grounded and taken care of. And we need to take care of our elderly. These are simple, affordable ways, things that everybody can do, because first of all, it's free. Second of all, if you need something, they're very relatively inexpensive. And the results are profound. It's nature.
Yeah, it's nature. Yeah. And I often say to my community that nature is the powerful biohacking tool we have. So to stay in nature is really powerful. And I really enjoyed this episode. It was a great episode. I will leave all your references and contacts in the show notes of this episode. And I invite everybody to read your brilliant book, Earthing. For my Italian audience, the book is called Earthing, Camminare a piedi nudi, l'energia della terra ti cura e guarisce. So this book was translated in many different languages. I don't know how many, but it's a great book. And you did also the movie that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. So thank you, Clint, and have a good one.
Well, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please let me know. And other than that, you can shorten this down a little bit for people. I'm sorry I talk so much.
No, you did a really great job. I really appreciate, because I think it's very beautiful to let people express themselves. So it's very authentic, and I like this episode because it's really comes from your heart, and I could feel it.
Okay, well, keep me posted, and it was really a joy and a pleasure to be able to meet you and visit with you and share this with you.
Thank you, Clint. So talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye.